Hey, how's it going, guys? Like Butter here, and today I'm bringing you a video that I've wanted to make for a couple of weeks now, but I wanted to make sure that I could present this in a way that most people could understand. And the reason I'm making this video is because I want to give some suggestions on what can bring the Division back. Now, a lot of you guys know the Division community as a whole and the fan base has really died down a lot after 1.6, and I think a lot of this has to do with the fact of there not being any new loot, new gear sets, new weapons to go for after 1.6. So we're still using and still playing with the same gear that we've had for months. And even with 1.5, not too many new gear sets came out, only one new gear set called Defense. And I put a poll on Twitter, which I'll show on screen here, and I was asking my followers what disinterests them about the Division, what made them kind of stop playing. And you can see that the percentages are there, where most people said it was the fact that no new loot was added to the game. Now, these suggestions that I'm going to make are basically revamps of the DLC that are already in the game. The reason I'm bringing this up is because there was a survey that went out to some people asking about a lot of the things that I've been suggesting over the past couple of weeks. The fact that it's in the survey means that it's definitely doable. So I wanted to do a video and kind of break down all the things that I really think could bring this game back and be super fun for another year and maybe even more years to come. So they talked about in the year 2 announcement that they're going to be having seasons and other things like that, which basically they kind of let us down easy and basically told us just straight up that there is going to be no new content, no level cap increase, no map expansion, but they did say that there's going to be new and, fun ways to play the content that's already in the game. Now, my suggestions here are ways that they can revamp the DLCs, because I think the DLCs were actually good for the amount of time and resources that they had to bring them out. Year 1 for the Division was probably the most fun I've ever had on a video game, but it came with a lot of problems, let's be honest. There were so many issues that eventually Massive had to pretty much halt production and push everything back so that they could do a major update and completely revamp the way the endgame worked. And I think a lot of these complications in year 1 kind of halted the amount of potential that these DLCs had. So I want to give some suggestions for ways that they could revamp the DLCs and give us something that would make this game very enjoyable and replayable, but also stay, obviously in the realm of the time that they have and being able for it to be done. Now, remember, like I said in the beginning of this video, the problem with 1.6 was that there was no new loot. So if these things happen without there being a gear score increase, new loot to go for, new weapons, new gear sets, maybe even new exotics, new exotic attachments, a bunch of new gear has to be added. It has to. You can't have a looter shooter and expect people to grind it for hours on end if there's not things to go for. Now, my suggestion is to make these variations of the DLC completely free. I think it's past the point of selling DLC with the Division. I think what they need to do and what will make them the most money is give a really prominent, really fun experience for people to play, and then people will spend money on the microtransactions and stuff. Like, I've even bought a couple of them myself. Some of the emotes are just great, and I know they can make more emotes in the future, but there's so many different weapon skins and gear that they can come out with to make a lot of money, and I know they will make more money on microtransactions than they will if they were to sell DLC. So here's my idea with the DLC. So there was 3 DLCs. There was Underground, Survival, and Last Stand. All 3 of these DLCs had unbelievable amounts of potential, but I feel like the execution was kind of just not there due to the lack of time that they had. So let's first go over Underground, which you can see me playing here in this video. Now, I really liked Underground because it gave me the feeling of kind of like, you know, dungeons where you get like a different experience, but you can get loot, and you can get loot without having to run the missions constantly or go in the dark zone. It was kind of nice because even though there's only like very small differences with each run that you would have, basically what they would do is they would take the sections and shuffle it around, and there would be like random objectives, and it would kind of just shuffle around the content to make it feel different every time. Now, a lot of people got really bored with the Underground DLC, and I think a lot of that has to do with it not having PvP or not having too different of variations. But I think what they can do is they can remake it so that there is a version of Underground and just, I don't know, call it like heroic or hardcore or something like that, and make it so that it is Hunter AI, which you guys probably have seen in, you know, the legendary missions now. But what I would do is I would definitely lower the amount of health they have. I feel like the NPCs are just too tanky and too annoying in legendary for it to actually feel fun. But what they can do is they can have, like, you know, the golds and the purples and the reds move around like hunters, but also be killable by a group that's good. Like, I just, the thing about the legendary missions, I think it was a really good idea, but I just think it's too annoying sometimes, that it feels like more of a drag to play through it than it is to actually, you know, have fun. Now, the reason 1.4 was so fun for me is because the challenging mode, it didn't feel like the NPCs were super bullet spongy, but they were more active and they moved around a lot more, so it felt more like I was constantly using my reflexes rather than just sitting there and glitching them at a corner and just pummeling them with like 4 to 5 mags just to put one of them down. What they also need to do with this mode, if they do it, is basically, so you go in, you know, you pick heroic or whatever it's called, and it'll give you random modifiers. Now, modifiers is something that they did put in Underground, but the problem is the 5 modifiers that they added were completely optional, and not only that, they weren't very fun. All the modifiers that they added were pretty annoying to deal with. For example, having, you know, starting with less ammo, you know, it would be super frustrating when you ran out of ammo. Like using a skill and not being able to use your other skill. I think that the idea of having modifiers in Underground was really good, and I think it works really well in games like Destiny. But the thing with Destiny is that the modifiers that Destiny has are really fun. You'll have like solar burn, or you'll have arc burn, and it'll make you use different weapons depending on what those modifiers are. You might also have a modifier where, you know, you do extra damage when you're airborne, that kind of thing. And I think they need to completely scrap the 5 modifiers that were in Underground and make new ones. Make ones that are fun. I want to see modifiers like SMGs do increased damage outside of their optimal range, or you do extra damage when in cover, or the melee NPCs do double the damage. Things like that. Like, make fun modifiers that will make playing through this version of Underground fun every single time. Because what happens is when you have these modifiers that make you play different, even though you're usually using like an assault rifle, well, maybe, you know, this time SMGs have double the damage while you're in cover or something like that. Well, you're going to want to actually use an SMG, whereas if there was no multiplier, you would basically just use what you're used to using. And it makes people play in different ways. You know, you could also make it so that, I don't know, like fire effects do double the damage. So you might want to put a Firecrest build on and try it that way, and have it switch every week where it just changes, kind of like the Nightfall in Destiny. And what they can do is they can make it so that you get weekly rewards, and then each time after that you play it, you won't get as many rewards, but you can keep playing through it every single time. And what this will do is it'll actually make it so that not only isn't going to be a different experience with, like, you know, the type of mission that it's going to be, but make it so that the modifiers make you play different, make you play out of your element, make you change the way that you're comfortable playing. Because right now, let's be honest, there's no reason not to run around with like Striker, alpha bridge or a high-end build without using an assault rifle. Like, you can use SMGs if you want, but the assault rifles essentially are going to be the strongest. Well, with modifiers, you can change this so that maybe SMGs are better, or maybe LMGs do 3 times the amount of damage. So you got to be careful, because the LMG NPCs are going to do more damage, but you are as well. So it'll make you, you know, get out that L85 that you have. Even I think it's an LMG in this game, even though in some games it's considered an assault rifle. But maybe you want to get out that M60 and get that, you know, increased mag. Maybe you have double the magazine size, like things like that. Like, there's hundreds of thousands of different multipliers and different modifiers that they could do to make Underground more fun than it is. And that's what I mean about missed opportunities and poor execution. I think if things like that were added into Underground, it would have been even more fun than it was. But keep in mind, there needs to be new loot, new gear sets, new weapons, and new things, so that when we do these things, it doesn't feel pointless. I can actually shuffle through my gear and look at things that I'm interested in. These days, when I play The Division, there's not a single piece of gear that I need, thanks to, you know, recalibration and the fact that you can re-roll your gear, and you're getting so much gear thrown at you that I think a lot of people already have min-max builds. Even if you're not like a hardcore player and you just play for a few hours a day, I without a doubt know that you guys have at least some decent build put together. And I think these ways will be good to give people more chances at more loot, but it will be in a way that's fun for everyone. Now let's get to the second DLC. Now this one is something that I felt very strong about for extremely long periods of time, and that is that survival was one of the biggest steps forward for this game. Survival brought so many players back to The Division, and even spiked interest in a lot of the big Destiny players like Gathalion, Sh55, Professor Broman. Like, a lot of these big streamers and big YouTubers were coming and trying The Division because survival had so much to offer. The Division has to take things that they have access to, such as the giant New York City, and use it to their advantage. I think what they should do with Survival DLC is make a hardcore Battle Royale version where, instead of it being like how the regular Survival DLC was, only one person can come out alive. And that's why you see Battle Royale games being so popular on Twitch and on YouTube and just in general, because people love that climax at the end of a match where you are constantly just looting up and gearing up throughout the entire experience, just to have that one final fight at the end that feels super rewarding, because you know that you outplayed and beat every single other person in that server. Now what I would do is, since there's only 24 players in a server, I would make a much smaller version of the map. Obviously they don't have to move around objects or anything, but basically they could just do it in the Dark Zone, or they could just do it in DZ North, and have all the players spawn on the outside of the map, and have the storm basically push from the outside into the center of the map, or into a portion of the map, so that you have to move towards the center or else you freeze to death, and then everyone kind of just goes to the middle and fights it out. Now if they do proper rewards for this, it'll be super fun. They need to have like a leaderboard that shows the amount of wins you have and that kind of thing. And this will be something that I can see people playing for very long periods of time. Survival was such a gem, but it felt like it was just kind of left in the dust, and like people barely even play it anymore. When I queue up for Survival, I'll be lucky to wait, you know, under 10 minutes and then have 7 people in a match. It's very important that they make this variation of the DLC free though, because with Battle Royale games, the population has to be there, or else it's going to cause for people to lose interest, because it's going to take so long to find matches. The last variation of the DLC is going to be Last Stand. I think Last Stand was a really good idea, and I think the game really needed a PvP mode where people could fight each other without having to deal with the penalty that you would face in the Dark Zone. The problem with Last Stand is the maps are way too big and the fire teams are way too big. I really think that they need to take portions of DZ North, since they were built so well, and make small maps so that we can have 4v4 competitive gameplay. There's two ways that they could do it. They could either make a competitive ranking system where, you know, you go in with your squad and if you win, you go up in rank. If you lose, you go down in rank. Or they could do something like in Destiny where they have Trials of Osiris, where maybe you go to the base of operations and you buy a scorecard and you get a certain amount of wins, you get special loot, that kind of thing. And if you know, lose, like how it works basically on Trials, which I've been super obsessed with on Destiny, is if you win 9 in a row, you go to the lighthouse. You don't do it all the time because it's really hard to win 9 in a row, but when you do, that feeling is amazing, and it's really fun to watch, and it's really fun to play, and the cosmetics that you get look super dope. So those are things that you could build towards. Maybe even have like you know, a leader system on there where it shows the amount of times that you've finished your card or went 9-0 or whatever. Obviously they don't have to copy exactly what Destiny did, but it's a very good example, and I think that this game, The Division, can be 10 times more competitive than Destiny could ever be. Destiny has a huge problem with like supers and imbalancing problems with the skill tree, whereas even though The Division has some of those problems as well, I think The Division has much more potential to be played at a competitive level than Destiny does. So I really want to see a small 4v4 objective mode game type where it's not ginormous maps where people can just run off and kill NPCs and win the game. I want like a hardcore competitive 4v4 PvP experience. Those are my suggestions for bringing the game back. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. If you agree with me or you disagree with me, I always like to hear people's comments as long as you're being constructive. I've been Like Butter, and I will talk to you guys next time. Take care, everybody.